I've always believed that a camera can explain things my mouth never could. Long before this road trip, long before the desert nights and the silhouettes that still appear in the corners of my dreams, photography was the one thing that felt solid in my life. I grew up in Colorado, surrounded by people who wanted to stay put, but I spent most of my time staring through viewfinders, framing things that were moving, changing, disappearing. By my late 20s, everything in my world felt loud. My job, my relationships, even my apartment. I needed quiet, real quiet. That's why I planned a photography trip through the Southwest. Empty highways, forgotten towns, places the world had left behind. I wasn't looking for danger. I just wanted a little silence. For the first few days, it was exactly that. I took scenic detours, stopped for sunsets that looked like molten copper, and wandered through dusty ghost towns where only my footsteps made a sound. I slept in my car, ate gas station sandwiches, listened to audiobooks until the signal dropped. It was the kind of freedom that makes you think maybe you've finally figured out who you're supposed to be. But on the fourth afternoon, everything shifted. A long line of brake lights forced the highway to a crawling stop. Heavy construction had the road torn open, and my GPS chirped with the confidence only technology can have. Rerouting. Turn right in 600 feet. I didn't think twice. I followed the instructions and watched the highway shrink in my rearview mirror. The detour started simple enough, a narrow service road that paralleled the highway. But soon it veered sharply into the desert, where the land turned pale and empty, and the sky seemed to lose color. A cold wind followed me like it had something to say, and my phone lost its last bar of service. That was the moment a knot settled in my stomach. I should have turned around, but I didn't. The farther I drove, the more I realized just how alone I was. No headlights behind me, no tire tracks ahead, just a single-lane road cutting through miles of desolate sand. My GPS kept insisting I was going the right way, its little arrow marching forward as if it knew more about the desert than I did. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, the landscape around me was swallowed in a bruised blue darkness. After nearly 90 minutes, something finally appeared on the horizon, pinpricks of light, barely visible through the drifting sand. Relief hit me like a warm wave. I thought, good, civilization. Maybe a station, maybe food, maybe someone to confirm this road wasn't a mistake. As I got closer, the lights formed into a small cluster of old stone buildings, the kind that looked like they belonged in a history book. A creaky gas station sat at the edge of the road, lit by a buzzing fluorescent tube that flickered like it was struggling to stay alive. I pulled in, gravel crunching under my tires, and immediately noticed another car, a bright blue compact with camping gear stacked to the roof. Finally, I muttered, someone else out here. But as I stepped out, the air felt wrong, hollow, still, almost staged. No wind, no insects, no distant hum of generators or traffic. Just a silence so complete it made my ears ring. The gas pump groaned as it began filling my tank, every gallon dripping slower than the last. Something else bothered me. The blue car. No driver. No footprints around it. Its windows were down a crack, letting in dust, but there was no sign anyone had been near it for hours. Then the sound came. At first it was faint, a thin, high-pitched cry carried across the darkness. I froze. Maybe it was an animal, I told myself. Coyotes make strange sounds. But then, clear as day, a woman's voice tore through the stillness. "Help me, please, someone." The hair on the back of my neck rose. My hands began to shake. And that's when I saw movement. 3 silhouettes slipped between 2 buildings, heading toward the station. Another figure lingered near the blue car, barely visible, but definitely human. My chest tightened. I knew, without understanding how, that I was in danger. My first instinct was to call out, But my second instinct, the one that felt older, wiser, forced me to swallow the words. Something about the way those figures moved wasn't right. It wasn't the desperate scramble of someone chasing the source of a scream. It was coordinated, practiced, like they already knew exactly where they were going. The pump clicked off after barely a few gallons, but I didn't wait for a full tank. I took a step back toward my car, keeping my eyes locked on the buildings. Another figure darted behind the boarded-up general store. The flickering station light made the shadows jump and warp until I couldn't tell how many people were out there. "Hello?" I called out, my voice weaker than I meant it to be. The woman screamed again, closer this time, as if she were just beyond the glow of the station lights. That broke me. I reached for the pump handle, but my fingers trembled so hard I nearly dropped it. I turned toward my car just as three silhouettes broke into a sprint, charging straight toward me. Their footsteps pounded against the sand, fast and heavy. One of them yelled something I couldn't understand. "Hey!" A voice barked behind me, coming from near the blue car. I didn't look back. I jumped into my driver's seat, slammed the door, and fumbled with the ignition. The pump hose ripped free with a sharp metallic snap as I gunned the engine. My tires spat loose gravel, and the car lunged forward onto the road. In the rearview mirror, I saw the silhouette spill out into the open road behind me, stopping just at the edge of the station's light. They didn't chase me, not immediately. They just stood there, watching, their faces swallowed by darkness. Something about the stillness of the woman's last scream echoed in my skull. There was something deliberate about all of it, like a trap that someone else had already stepped into. As the station shrank into the black desert behind me, dread tightened around my ribs. I thought of the blue car and its camping gear. Where was its owner? Where was the woman who screamed? And why did those silhouettes look like they were waiting for me? The desert swallowed my car in darkness as I sped away, watching the headlights carve out a narrow tunnel through the night. I didn't dare look back again. My hands were locked around the wheel, knuckles stiff and white, as if letting go for even a second would allow the past few minutes to catch up to me. I kept expecting headlights to appear behind me, someone following, closing in, but my mirrors showed nothing, just blackness. After 20 minutes, the adrenaline began fading into a trembling numbness. My gas tank hovered below a quarter full thanks to the ripped pump. My GPS flickered hopelessly, spinning in circles before finally freezing with a blank map. I had no idea if I was heading towards civilization or deeper into nowhere, but I kept driving. Eventually the road widened, the pavement smoothed. A faint orange glow appeared on the horizon, and for the first time in hours, I let myself breathe. Streetlights, real ones. The outline of a city grew from the darkness like a sunrise I'd been begging for. I pulled into the first gas station I saw, this one bright, modern, humming with life. There were people inside, cars at pumps, music playing from a speaker. Civilization had never looked so beautiful. I walked inside and went straight to the clerk. "Ma'am, you all right?" he asked, eyeing my shaking hands. "No," I said. "I need to call the police." The officers listened patiently as I described everything: the town, the silhouettes, the screams, the abandoned blue car. They exchanged a look I couldn't read. One officer finally said, "Ma'am, there's no town out there. Not anymore." "What do you mean, anymore?" "That place was condemned almost 20 years ago. No power, no residents, no functioning buildings. It's been closed off for safety." I felt my stomach drop, but I knew what I saw and what I heard. I didn't sleep that night. Not in the hotel the police helped me book, not even for a few stray minutes. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the silhouettes again. The way they moved with intention. The way they seemed to know exactly where I was. The officers had sent a unit out to the area, but by morning they told me they found nothing. No lights, no footprints, no blue car, no signs of struggle. Maybe it was an illusion, one of them suggested gently. Happens more than you think out in the desert. But I wasn't convinced. I could still hear the woman's voice, raw and terrified. I could still see the shine of the blue car's roof. I could still feel the weight of those watching eyes. Before I left town, I stopped at a diner off the main road. The waitress, a woman in her 60s with a calm, knowing smile, refilled my coffee and asked where I'd been traveling. When I told her, her expression shifted, subtle but unmistakably wary. "There's old places out there," she said softly. "Places people shouldn't wander into. Not because they're haunted, but because they're forgotten by everyone but the wrong kind of folks." I didn't press her for details. I didn't want to know. I drove home the long way, sticking to well-lit highways and busy rest stops. My camera stayed in its bag. For the first time in years, I didn't want to capture anything. Some places, I realized, aren't meant to be documented. Some memories are warnings, not stories. Still, even now, months later, when I'm alone at night and the house settles into silence, I sometimes hear that voice again. Faint, desperate, echoing across miles of desert, and I remember the silhouettes. I remember how they moved. And I know the desert hasn't forgotten me either. I used to think road trips could fix anything. A bad breakup, burnout, losing the thread of who you are. All of it felt smaller when the highway stretched wide ahead of you. That's why I said yes when Harper suggested a girls' trip from Reno to Denver. "One last adventure before we turn into boring adults," she joked. And she wasn't wrong. We'd all been slipping into our own private ruts. Harper had just quit a job she hated. Danny was drowning in grad school. And me? I'd spent the last 6 months convincing myself I was okay after getting laid off from a photography gig I'd loved. The three of us had been best friends in college, but life had yanked us in different directions. This trip felt like a chance to stitch ourselves back together. Harper borrowed her cousin's SUV, a sun-bleached, dented thing she swore was indestructible. We packed camping gear, a cooler full of snacks, cheap plastic sunglasses, and the kind of optimism you can only have before something goes wrong. Highway 50, the loneliest road in America, lived up to the nickname instantly. No towns, no billboards, just shimmering heat waves, and that unforgiving Nevada horizon. The silence between us grew companionable. We were finally laughing again, finally relaxing. Then, around mid-afternoon, the SUV hiccuped. A little sputter. Harper smacked the dashboard like she was disciplining a child. "Don't you dare." The engine coughed again, and then it died completely, coasting to a tragic, overheated stop. The silence returned, but it wasn't friendly anymore. No signal on our phones, no cars in sight, no shade except jagged rocks and sagebrush. The heat, 104 degrees, pressed on us like a punishment. We had no idea the worst part wasn't the heat or the broken engine. It was who was already watching us. We decided our only option was to walk. Harper loaded her backpack like she'd done this 1,000 times. "Town's got to be, 10 miles? She said, forcing cheer she didn't feel. Danny looked at her like she'd announced a funeral. "In this heat? We'll die before we find a soda machine." Still, we started walking. The sun roasted the backs of our necks, and our boots kicked dust into the shimmering air. The silence around us grew so thick that every breath felt loud. Around the second mile, I noticed something unusual. A dark blue Suburban on a ridge overlooking the road. Perfectly still, perfectly quiet. I pointed it out. Harper shrugged. "Probably someone camping." "Up there, no trail, no shade," Danny said. "That's weird." We kept walking. I checked again a few minutes later. The SUV wasn't on the ridge anymore. It was angled slightly closer, as if it had shifted positions while we weren't looking. I tried to convince myself I was imagining it, but then it moved again. Not toward us, just repositioning, watching. We walked faster, our shadows stretching longer as the heat softened into late afternoon gold. The Suburban stayed the same distance behind, even when we stopped for water. It wasn't close enough to threaten us, but far too deliberate to ignore. "Should we wave?" Harper called out. Danny grabbed her arm. "Don't. If they wanted to help, they'd have already stopped." The longer we walked, the clearer it became that the SUV wasn't just another traveler. It was pacing us, matching us, keeping us in its sights. When dusk finally crept across the desert, the Suburban descended from the ridge and rolled onto the highway behind us, slow, steady, and silent. Something inside me dropped into a cold pit. We weren't alone anymore. Night in the desert arrives fast, 1 minute hot and blinding, the next an open-mouthed darkness swallowing the horizon. The temperature dropped so sharply our sweat turned cold. My teeth started to chatter. The Suburban crept behind us, headlights flicking on and off like someone was testing how much fear we had left. Every time the lights flared, the brightness burned through the dim like a warning. Then they'd cut out entirely, leaving only the hum of an idling engine. "We need a plan," Harper whispered. "Yeah. Step 1, don't die," Danny muttered. We kept to the shoulder, clinging to the faint line of the highway like it was the only real thing left. The Suburban stayed slow, patient, predatory. Whoever was inside wasn't in a hurry. Then we heard something that chilled me. Laughter. Not loud, not close, just drifting across the highway. A soft, eerie chuckle carried by the wind. I froze. So did the other two. "That isn't real," Harper whispered, shaking her head. "We're tired, dehydrated." But then something rolled toward us across the pavement. A bottle of water. A full one. Danny kicked it away like it was poison. "They're messing with us," she said. "They want us scared." They didn't have to try hard. My hands were shaking uncontrollably now. We formed a tight circle, backs pressed together. Harper held a tent pole like a spear. Danny gripped a rock the size of her fist. I had my metal water bottle dented from panic. The SUV idled closer, slow, then stopped completely. Its lights went out. Total darkness. I whispered, "If they're waiting for us to panic, they're close." We weren't being chased. We were being hunted. My brain felt like static, disoriented, dizzy, overheating even in the cold night air. Then, somewhere in the fog, a memory surfaced. Our emergency camping beacon. "No signal required," I muttered, digging through my backpack with frantic fingers. Harper gasped when I pulled out the compact orange device. "Leah, you're a genius." "I'm a terrified genius," I corrected. I flipped the switch. A bright red strobe began flashing into the emptiness of the desert. The beacon chirped rhythmically, loud and sharp, cutting through the night like a lifeline. The Suburban didn't move, didn't respond, didn't flash its lights. Nothing. Minutes felt like hours. My legs cramped. Danny kept whispering, "Come on, come on," as if she could will help into existence. I kept checking the SUV, half expecting doors to open and strangers to spill out. Then, the engine growled. The Suburban started creeping toward us again, just inches at a time, like someone savoring our fear. Every instinct screamed, "Run!" But where? The desert stretched into nothing. No cover. No escape. "He sees the beacon," Harper whispered. "He knows help is coming. Or he wants to finish this before it gets here," Danny said. My stomach twisted painfully. Then a sound split the night. Distant, deep, mechanical. A helicopter. A spotlight swept across the desert, blinding and heavenly. The instant the beam touched the Suburban, the driver reacted. The SUV spun in a spray of gravel, fishtailing before disappearing toward the dark side of the cliffs. Search and rescue reached us minutes later. 2 men with blankets and water, faces tight with concern. "You're lucky," one said. "If we were 10 minutes later." He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. We were taken to a small ranger station where we sat wrapped in emergency blankets, sipping water with shaky hands. Harper kept rubbing her arms, muttering, "We should have stayed in Reno. We should have stayed home." Danny stared at the floor, tears drying on her cheeks. Who does that? Who stalks 3 women in the middle of nowhere? No one had answers. The officers asked us everything. Descriptions, license plate, we never saw one. Sounds, anything unusual. We told them it was a dark blue Suburban with pitch black windows, the kind that hides everything. Search teams found tire tracks but nothing more. No footprints, no campsite, no engine fluid. It was like the SUV had been swallowed by the desert. We learned later that similar reports had come in over the past few months. Lone travelers, mostly women, noticing a dark SUV on remote roads. Always watching, never identified. We went home the next day, each of us quieter than usual. The ride back to Reno felt impossibly long. Every car that approached made my pulse spike. Every glance at the mirror made my stomach tighten. I still check behind me on highways. Still keep my doors locked even while driving. Still avoid lonely stretches of road unless I absolutely have to. We survived, but something fundamental shifted in me. In all of us. The world didn't feel wide and open anymore. It felt sharp around the edges, like danger could slip in through any crack we ignored. Sometimes when I can't sleep, I think about how calm the driver was. How patient. How deliberate. Whoever they weren't improvising. They were waiting. And I'll never forget the feeling of knowing, with absolute certainty, that we were the entertainment for someone who didn't need to touch us to terrify us. I used to think nothing bad could happen during senior year. There's this illusion that life is on pause right before graduation, like the world is giving you a few final months of freedom before it hands you bills, responsibilities, and an inbox full of unread emails. That's why we planned the road trip. Lola, Vivian, and I, Aaron, met freshman year in a cramped dorm where the fire alarm went off every other week. We survived heartbreaks, finals, bad cafeteria food, and too many late-night breakdowns to count. This trip was supposed to be our victory lap before adult life split us into different cities. We packed snacks, old playlists, and the overconfidence that comes with being 22. The Midwest stretched out in front of us. Endless fields, quiet towns, and highways that felt like they could carry you straight off the edge of the map. But an hour into the drive, Lola said, "Do you guys see that?" In the rearview mirror, a white cargo van hugged our lane. No plates, dented bumper, windows tinted like sunglasses. Vivian laughed. Creepy, but probably nothing. I agreed. Things only become stories when you add meaning to them. At that moment, I added none. But the van stayed behind us, mile after mile, turn after turn. And deep down, something in my stomach tightened, like I had just looked at something that had already been looking back. We stopped at a gas station near a tiny farm town, the kind of place with one soda machine and a bathroom key attached to a hubcap. As we filled the tank, the white van rolled in and parked directly behind us. No one got out. "Okay, that's weird," Lola muttered, pulling her hoodie tighter. I tried to be logical. Maybe they're just resting. But I didn't believe my own words. 2 hours later, at a diner off Highway 20, the van reappeared. Same dent, same silent windows, same lack of plates. While we waited for our sandwiches, I glanced out the window and saw a silhouette inside, just an outline of a head and shoulders, unmoving. "Guys," I whispered, "someone's in there." Vivian shook her head. "Then why don't they ever get out?" None of us had an answer. Back on the road, we tried driving faster. The van stayed exactly the same distance behind. When we slowed down, it did too. It never changed lanes, never drifted. It was like it was tethered to us. By late afternoon, our nerves were shot. We're stopping at the next busy rest plaza, Lola decided. People around us means safety. We pulled in, and nearly choked when we saw it. The white van was already parked, engine off, aimed toward the entrance like it had been waiting for us. That was the first moment I truly felt afraid. Not nervous, not unsettled. Afraid. Inside the plaza, we rushed to find security. The guard, a middle-aged guy with kind eyes, listened patiently as we stumbled through our explanation. "A white cargo van," he repeated. "Dented bumper, no plates, parked right outside?" "Yes," I said. "We're scared to go back out there." He grabbed his flashlight. "Stay here, I'll check the lot." We watched him walk out through the glass doors. He scanned row after row, twice, 3 times. Finally, he came back inside, shaking his head. "There's no white van out there," Vivian snapped. "Did you look everywhere?" "Everywhere," he insisted. "You 3 okay? Need me to call someone?" I felt dizzy. I knew what we saw. Lola tugged on my sleeve. "Let's just go. I don't want to be here anymore." When we stepped outside, cold air slapped us awake. The parking lot stretched out under yellow lights, full of cars, very normal. The van was gone, completely gone. We climbed into our car without speaking. The silence between us wasn't empty. It was thick, like something new had entered it. Something we didn't want to name yet. Back on the highway, none of us dared look in the mirrors for a long time. When I finally did, the road behind us was pitch black. For a moment, I felt relief. Maybe we'd imagined it. Maybe stress, exhaustion, and paranoia made the van into something more than it was. But that night proved otherwise. We checked into a cheap roadside motel right before midnight. The room smelled like stale fries and disinfectant, but we were too drained to care. We pushed the dresser in front of the door, locked every bolt, and climbed into the beds fully clothed. Around 3 a.m., Lola shook me awake. "Aaron," she whispered. "Listen." Outside, just beyond the thin motel wall, an engine idled, slow, deep, too close. Vivian sat up. "Tell me that's not what I think it is." I moved to the window and peeled back the curtain 1 inch. The white van sat in the lot facing our room. Its headlights were on full beam, bright enough to slice through the crack in the curtain. It wasn't moving, but the engine was running, rumbling low like a growl. "We should call the police," Vivian said, voice thin. We did. 2 officers arrived 20 minutes later. They searched the lot, the road, the alley, the woods behind the motel. Nothing. No van, no headlights, no tire marks. One officer suggested we might be overtired. Another asked if we'd been drinking. I wanted to scream at him. Instead, I just nodded numbly. The officers left. The room felt colder after they were gone. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. Neither did the girls. The van didn't return. But we all felt something else had. Something of it. Something that clung to us like fog. By morning, we decided to cut the trip short and head home. None of us said it out loud, but we were all thinking the same thing. Whatever had followed us wasn't done. An hour into the drive, we passed a ditch on the side of the highway. Faded police tape fluttered in the wind. And there, half buried in weeds, sat a white cargo van. Dented bumper, no plates. The same van. "Holy..." Vivian couldn't finish. I pulled over. My whole body felt numb. The van had clearly crashed months ago. Windows shattered, frame rusted, abandoned long before our trip even began. "So, what the hell was following us?" Lola whispered. I didn't answer. I couldn't, because standing there on the side of the road, staring at the wreck, I felt something shift inside me. A heavy, awful realization. The van we'd seen at the gas station, the diner, the rest plaza, the motel. It hadn't been real metal and wheels. It was something tied to the accident, something still replaying the moment of being noticed, something that latched onto us the second we looked too long, and whatever it was, it wanted to be seen. We drove away without speaking. None of us looked in the mirrors again, but sometimes, when the night gets too quiet, I can still hear an engine idling, slow, familiar, patient, like it remembers me. If you'd asked me a year ago what I expected from a post-graduation road trip, I would have told you sunsets, junk food, loud playlists, and the feeling that the world was finally opening up. I never imagined the desert would nearly swallow us whole, or that I'd still wake up at night hearing the sound of heavy boots crunching on sand. But before everything went sideways, it was just 4 friends. Me, Maya, and my roommates Jordan, Selena, and Rena, feeling untouchable with our freshly printed diplomas and nothing on our calendars except freedom. We were all burnt out from finals week, drained and reckless enough to decide that a 7-hour drive from Phoenix to Los Angeles needed to be more scenic. Instead of the interstate, we wanted isolation. Instagram shots of wide-open desert, the kind of trip we'd brag about later. My Jeep wasn't exactly dependable, but we convinced ourselves it had character, laughing every time the engine rattled. We left early in the morning, the windows down, the air still cool. Everyone sang along to songs we'd grown sick of months before. For once, we weren't thinking about resumes or rent or whatever came next. By mid-afternoon, though, the desert changed. The heat thickened. Shade became something we talked about like a myth. And my Jeep, my loyal heap of noise, started sputtering. At first I brushed it off. She does this sometimes, I insisted, knocking the dashboard like that would reassure anyone. But 10 minutes later, the temperature gauge hit the red zone, steam hissed from under the hood, and the Jeep lurched to a stop on a dead stretch of road where the asphalt looked like it was melting. "We're fine," Jordan said, even though we weren't. No signal. 1 bottle of water. No cars in sight. The sky felt huge and angry overhead. That's when the desert stopped feeling empty, and a dusty, sun-faded pickup approached. The truck slowed beside us, tires crackling on gravel, and an older man with a faded ball cap leaned out. He had a warm smile, the kind that might have comforted us under any other circumstance. "You girls stranded?" he asked, voice gentle and unhurried. Every red flag in the world waved in my head, but the heat was beating us senseless. Rena whispered, "Please tell me he has water." None of us voiced the other fear, the bigger one. We were 4 women alone in the middle of nowhere. Vulnerable didn't even begin to describe it. The man introduced himself as Uncle Ray. "Everyone around here calls me that." He spoke like he'd practiced sounding friendly. Then he offered to tow the Jeep to a mechanic he knew, just a ways off the main highway. "That's the opposite direction," Selena murmured to me. But we were already dehydrated, sunburned, and half delirious. When Ray handed us a cold bottle of water, miraculous, sweating with condensation, it felt like lifeline logic took over. Against better judgment, we agreed to ride with him while he hooked my Jeep to a tow line. Inside the truck, the air smelled like sun-baked metal and old cigarettes. I noticed there were no interior door handles, just smooth metal plates where they should have been. I told myself older trucks were weird sometimes. Jordan caught my eye in the rearview mirror, her expression asking, "You seeing this too?" Ray hummed to himself as he drove. At first, just tuneless noise. Then he began rambling, half to himself. "Desert keeps to itself. Outsiders don't understand it. Folks get lost out here all the time." His tone was so quiet and strange that Rena stiffened beside me. And still, we stayed silent. We didn't want to believe the situation had shifted. But the more the truck rattled down twisting dirt paths, the more obvious it became. Ray wasn't taking us anywhere near the highway. And we had made a terrible mistake. We'd been driving maybe 20 minutes when the desert around us changed again. No road signs, no tire tracks, nothing but endless dirt roads weaving into places the GPS would never acknowledge. "So, Ray?" Jordan asked lightly. "How much longer until the mechanic?" "Soon," he said. Something about the way he said it made my stomach tighten. Selena, sitting behind him, leaned forward slightly. I saw her eyes shift downward, then widen. She mouthed something at me. "Tools." I pretended not to react, but she tapped my shoulder when Ray wasn't looking and lifted one corner of a dusty tarp. Beneath it were thick coils of rope, a crowbar, a long-handled wrench, and something that made the blood drain from my face. Metal cuffs, half hidden, as if shoved under the seat in a hurry. Rena immediately tried her door. It didn't move. No lock, no handle, just sealed metal. "Hey, Ray," she said, forcing a laugh. "Your doors are, kinda tricky." "Truck's been through a lot," he replied. "Don't fuss with things you don't understand." His voice had lost all warmth. We passed an old burned-down shack, charred beams twisted like ribs. Ray slowed the truck and tilted his head toward it. "Other travelers got stuck out here too," he said quietly. "Desert keeps what it wants." That was the moment I fully accepted we were in danger. Jordan whispered, "We need a plan. Fast." I swallowed, forcing my voice steady. "Okay, everyone stay calm. We wait for the first chance." Ray kept mumbling under his breath, something about outsiders and noise and how the desert had rules. None of us wanted to ask what he meant. But with the sun dropping fast, every minute made the dirt roads darker, narrower, easier to disappear into. If we didn't escape soon, we wouldn't escape at all. Our opportunity came just as the sun began sinking behind a line of jagged rocks. The world was tinted in dark orange and purple, shadows reaching long across the sand. I forced myself to breathe slowly, summoning a shaky, almost believable voice. "Ray, I think I'm gonna be sick. Can you stop?" He didn't answer at first, just kept driving. Then finally, "Fine, don't make a mess in my truck." He pulled over beside a stretch of desert brush. As soon as the truck parked, Rena executed her part, slumping sideways like she'd passed out cold. Ray swore under his breath. "What the hell now?" He got out of the truck and opened Rena's door from the outside, bending down to shake her shoulder. Jordan immediately moved. She crawled through the small sliding window behind the seats, squeezing into the truck bed with a speed I didn't know she had. I followed, pushing my head and shoulders through while Selena kept watch. Jordan found a latch, a tiny emergency release hidden near the toolbox. "Got it! Go!" The second the bed door snapped open, we exploded into the desert air. Ray heard us. His shout sliced the silence. "Hey, get back here!" We ran, sprinting without direction, shoes slipping on loose sand. Behind us, Ray's heavy footsteps pounded, shaky with rage. A flashlight beam whipped across the landscape, sweeping past us like a hunting spotlight. "Don't look back!" Jordan yelled. We reached a rocky ravine lined with scrub bushes and dropped into it, sliding on gravel and scraping our hands raw. We huddled behind a fallen boulder, lungs burning, barely daring to breathe. Ray's flashlight scanned the ravine above us. "You girls don't know what you're doing," he called out. "Desert ain't forgiving." His voice drew closer, then farther, pacing. But eventually, hours later, it faded. We stayed there all night, shivering as desert cold clawed through our clothes, too scared to sleep. When dawn finally touched the sand, we were still alive. But we were different people. Just after sunrise, Our phones flickered to life with a single bar of signal. Barely enough, but enough. My hands shook as I called 911, stammering out our location with every landmark I could see. It took rescue teams nearly 2 hours to reach us. When the first ranger truck appeared on the ridge, I felt my knees give out. We were dehydrated, sunburned, exhausted, but alive. The officers listened carefully as we explained everything. They took notes, asked us to describe Ray, his truck, the tools, the missing interior handles. No one rolled their eyes. No one dismissed us. But when a search team was sent to look for him, they found nothing. No truck, no Jeep, no tire tracks. As if the desert had swallowed every trace. That evening, a detective revealed something that still chills me. 3 female travelers went missing in the last few years along that same stretch. Always young, always isolated. We never identified a suspect. Ray wasn't a helpful stranger who made a wrong impression. He was someone who had done this before. We returned home traumatized, bonded in a way we never asked for. We don't travel without backup plans now, or satellite phones, or each other. Sometimes I still see Ray's silhouette in my nightmares. Sometimes I hear the click of metal restraints, the cold calm in his voice. And sometimes, when I drive through open desert, I feel the same heat on my skin, the same silence pressing in, and I remember the truth. We weren't rescued because we were smart. We were rescued because we refused to stay. Desperation can cloud judgment, but danger rarely hides its intentions for long. Your safety is never worth the risk of ignoring red flags, especially in places where help can't reach you. I've always believed sisters go through phases, years where you're inseparable, and years where you barely talk unless someone needs help moving furniture. For the past few years, my sisters and I had been drifting like loose boats on different tides. Kay was chasing a new career in Seattle. Ruthie was struggling through community college, and I, Jenna the oldest, was the unofficial glue who had gotten tired of being the glue. When Kay called saying she'd finally landed her dream job, I suggested we do something we hadn't done in years, a weekend sister trip. A quick escape, nothing fancy, just ocean air, bad diner food, and a cheap room where we could laugh again like we used to. Kay found the place. Whispering Shore Lodge, a vintage little motel on the Washington coast that looked like someone stitched it together from seashells and nostalgia. The photos showed seashell-shaped lamps, floral bedspreads, and a balcony with a view of endless gray waves. It was cheap enough to feel like a good deal, and old enough to feel like a gamble. "Smells like ocean mildew and retirement," Kay said when we checked in. She wasn't wrong. The walls were thin, the carpet was damp, and the air had that stale salt scent old motels never shake. But it was charming in its own tired way. We put our bags down, argued about who got the bathroom first, and decided the weekend would be about celebrating. No work talk, no stress, no overthinking. Just us. I remember thinking, we needed this. I just didn't know how badly the motel wanted us to, or how it would start with something simple, a sound you could almost ignore, furniture dragging in the room next to ours, room 12B, a room the front desk later swore was empty. The first night, around 11:40 p.m., I was brushing my teeth when I heard it, heavy scraping, like someone dragging a dresser across old hardwood floors. Kay and Ruthie froze. "Please tell me that's not in the room next to us," Ruthie whispered. The sound came again, long and low, as if someone was pulling furniture from one side of 12B to the other. For a full 5 minutes, none of us moved. Finally, Kay huffed. "Okay, no, not doing this." I grabbed the room phone and dialed the front desk. "Hi, sorry, I don't mean to complain, but the guest in 12B is moving furniture for fun, I guess." There was a long pause. too long. "Ma'am," the clerk said quietly, "there is no guest in 12B. My stomach dipped. "What?" "That room has been closed for renovation since last year." I looked at Kay and mouthed, "Renovation?" "But someone is definitely in there," I insisted. The clerk exhaled shakily, like he wanted to say more but thought better of it. "I'll, send someone to check." He didn't. The dragging got louder, closer. Then it stopped. 3 seconds of absolute silence. And then 3 knocks. Pause. 1 knock. Soft, deliberate, like someone tapping right behind our shared wall. Ruthie backed into the corner, hands over her ears. Nope. I'm not doing haunted wall Morse code." We tried to laugh it off, but none of us slept. Every time I drifted, I'd hear that pattern echo in my head. 3 knocks. Pause. 1 knock. It felt less like someone asking for attention and more like someone practicing it, like they were learning the rhythm of us. The next night, exhaustion hit us early. We watched a movie on my laptop, ate microwave popcorn, and tried desperately to pretend the previous night never happened. By midnight, we were all asleep. At 3:14 a.m., I woke to a scream, Ruthie's. She stood at the foot of Kay's bed, trembling so violently the mattress shook. "Someone's on the balcony," she gasped. They were leaning against the glass, like right against it. The whole pane bowed in. The balcony door was locked, curtains drawn, but Kay ripped them open anyway. Nothing. Just the moonlit ocean and the railing glinting faintly. No footprints on the dew. No smudges on the glass. We called the front desk again. This time the clerk didn't even pretend to hide the fear in his voice. "Stay inside. I'll check the cameras," he said. 20 minutes later, he knocked on our door. We saw nothing, he whispered. "Nobody came to your balcony." Ruthie burst into tears. "I'm not crazy. Someone was there. He was bent forward, too far, like he didn't have bones." Kay squeezed her. "We believe you." The clerk swallowed hard. "If you want another room, I can check what we have open." "No," I said before thinking. "I'm not staying anywhere alone in this place." The clerk hesitated, then nodded. "I understand." Something twisted in my chest. The way he said it, "I understand," like we weren't the first. The next morning, Kay confronted the motel owner, a frail woman with salt-white hair and eyes that looked permanently tired. When Kay demanded answers, the woman lowered her gaze. 3 years ago," she said, voice trembling, "a guest disappeared from 12B. She reported that same knock. 3. Pause. 1. My skin turned ice cold. The owner whispered, "The room attracts lonely people." We should have left then. We should have grabbed our bags and run. But we convinced ourselves we were overreacting. It was our last night after all. What were the odds something else would happen? Apparently very high. We stayed up late, distracted ourselves with card games, kept every light on. Midnight passed. 1, 2, almost 3. Then it started. 3 knocks. Pause. 1. But this time, it wasn't from the wall. It came from inside our closet. Ruthie screamed first. Kay grabbed her backpack. I froze, paralyzed, feeling my heart hammer against my ribs. The knocking repeated, louder, like someone testing how thin the wood was. I reached for the doorknob without meaning to, some terrible instinct pulling me. Kay yanked me back. "Are you insane?" Then the doorknob twisted. Just once, slow, deliberate. We bolted. No shoes, no jackets. We ran barefoot through the hallway, down the stairs, and straight into the parking lot under the flickering motel sign. The asphalt tore our feet, but we didn't stop. The night clerk rushed out. "What happened?" I could barely speak. "The closet. Someone was in our closet." He paled. "That's not possible. There's no access point behind it." Ruthie sobbed. "Then how was it knocking?" We slept in the car that night, all three of us curled up under extra jackets. I didn't close my eyes once. Every creak of the wind sounded like that pattern. 3 knocks. Pause. 1. It followed me like a heartbeat. By morning, we decided we weren't leaving without our stuff, but we sure weren't going in alone. We called the local police, and 2 officers escorted us back inside Whispering Shore Lodge. The owner wrung her hands nervously. "The girls, they're not lying. Something's wrong with that wing." We walked down the hallway together. Our room door was shut tight, just as we'd left it, but room 12B, the supposedly sealed room, stood wide open. The inside was spotless. Fresh linens, polished lamps, empty hangers aligned in the closet. No dust, no debris, as if someone had spent the entire night preparing it for a guest. And on the bed, all of our belongings, neatly arranged, clothes folded, shoes paired, phone chargers coiled carefully. Even the book I'd left face down was placed upright, bookmark straightened. The officers turned to the owner. "Did you enter this room?" "No," she whispered. "We never open it." Ruthie took a shaky step backward. "Why would someone move our things in here?" Nobody answered. We took our stuff without repacking it, stuffing everything into bags just to get out. As we left, I felt cold air brush my ear, like someone exhaling from inches away. I didn't turn around. Not once. We drove home in silence, barefooted, shaken, exhausted. None of us looked back at the motel in the rearview mirror. That was 2 years ago. Ruthie refuses to stay anywhere without double locks now. I sleep with a nightlight like I'm 7 again. Kay is the one who admits it out loud. Whenever I'm in a new place, she tells me, and the room gets quiet, I still hear it. 3 knocks. Pause. 1. Sometimes she says it sounds patient. Sometimes it sounds like it remembers us. At 21, I thought fear was something I had outgrown. I'd driven across half the country with nothing but a duffel bag, a cooler of grocery store sandwiches, and the reckless confidence of someone who believes the world is mostly good. I had just accepted an entry-level job on the West Coast, my first real job, and buying a reliable car wasn't exactly in my budget. So I took the only thing I had, my old minivan, patched together with mismatched interior panels and a tiny mattress I'd squeezed between 2 built-in drawers. I told myself it felt like an adventure, not a financial necessity. To save money, I planned to camp or sleep at rest stops. I'd done enough road trips to feel comfortable with the idea. "Just lock the doors," my mom kept reminding me, and I would laugh and say, "Mom, I'm fine. I'll be careful." I believed that then. On my second day, I'd been driving for almost 14 hours. The pine forests thickened the farther I went, darkening the highway shoulders until the landscape looked like a solid wall of trees. When I finally spotted a blue rest area sign, I nearly cried with relief. The place looked old, just a single restroom building, a row of trash cans, and 2 flickering vending machines casting uneven light across the pavement. No cars, no trucks, no overnight travelers. But exhaustion carried more weight than caution, so I used the restroom, climbed into the back of my van, locked the doors, and collapsed onto my mattress. When I slid the curtains shut, the world disappeared. In the quiet cocoon of my minivan, I let myself drift into sleep, unaware that in just a few hours, the silence outside would turn into something far more dangerous than solitude. I woke up because something didn't sound right. At first it was faint, like distant gravel shifting under shoes. Then the sound drew closer, slow footsteps circling the van. The kind of movement people make when they're trying not to be heard. I froze, every nerve in my body waking faster than my mind could process what was happening. Two voices whispered outside, low, hurried, too close. My van rocked slightly, as if someone brushed against it. I held my breath. Maybe hikers, maybe maintenance workers. But no engine noises, no lights. And it was 2:45 a.m. I reached for the curtain and peeled it back just enough to see through the edge of the glass. Nothing. The pavement outside was empty. The vending machines flickered. The restroom building was still. My heartbeat slowed just a little, until I shifted to check the window on the sliding door. That's when a man's face appeared inches from the glass. His grin was wide, unmoving, too wide. His eyes were locked directly on mine, as if he'd known exactly where I'd look. He didn't blink, didn't move, just stared with the expression of someone who wasn't surprised to find me watching. I jerked back, smacking my elbow against the cabinet. He ducked out of sight immediately, and I heard urgent footsteps, 2 sets, moving around the van. A tap, then a whisper, then a scrape along the metal. Panic blurred into adrenaline. My hands shook uncontrollably as I crawled into the driver's seat. I didn't even put on my shoes. I turned the key, grateful the engine started without hesitation. But as soon as I tried to pull forward, the van lurched. A sickening thump, thump, thump followed, the unmistakable slap of shredded rubber dragging on pavement. They had slashed my tire while I slept, and now they knew I was awake. I swallowed the rising panic and kept the van moving. Even on a ruined tire, forward was better than staying still. The rest stop exit ramp angled upward toward the highway, lit only by a faint overhead lamp. I pressed the gas, hoping the van could limp its way out. As the headlights swept across the tree line, one of the men stepped out. He walked toward me casually, like someone strolling up to ask for directions. His clothes were dark and loose, and the grin on his face hadn't changed. He waved with one hand. "Hold on there," he called out, voice friendly but wrong in a way I can't explain. "Looks like you got a flat. We can fix that for you." The second man emerged behind the van, staying partially hidden. I watched him in the mirrors, every instinct screaming to get away. "I'm good," I yelled through the glass, refusing to roll the window down even an inch. The man in front took another step. "Come on now. It's dangerous to drive like that. Open the door." I lifted my phone, aiming it at him as though recording. I already called someone. His expression changed instantly. No friendliness, just a sharp, angry tightening. He slammed his palm against the window. "Open the door." I didn't hesitate. I reversed hard, sending the van screaming backward down the ramp. The ruined tire shredded further, but I didn't care. He ran alongside the van for a few steps before giving up. The second man shouted something I couldn't understand. I swung the van around, floored it, and barreled back toward the exit. The incline that had stopped me once became the only thing between me and survival. The van groaned, the rim scraping violently, sparks flying in the mirror. But it climbed. At the top, the highway finally unfolded before me. Open, empty, blessed. I didn't look back. I drove as fast as the ruined tire allowed, my hands locked on the wheel as if the van would slip from the road the moment I loosened my grip. Every few seconds I checked the rearview mirror, terrified I'd see headlights, or worse, none at all, chasing me down the highway. The road stretched for miles without a single sign of life. My phone barely kept signal long enough to load anything, and every bump made the metal rim jolt in protest. Each sound had me flinching, imagining the van giving out and leaving me stranded again. 20 minutes feels like nothing in daylight. On that night, it felt like a lifetime. When the gas station finally appeared, huge neon sign glowing like a sanctuary, I almost sobbed. A couple of trucks were parked outside, and the interior lights were bright enough to make me feel like I was re-entering civilization. I pulled in crooked, the van wobbling, and stumbled inside. The night clerk took one look at me and said, "You okay?" I wasn't. I told him everything, shaking, out of breath, trying not to cry. He immediately called the police. 2 officers arrived within 15 minutes. They asked precise, calm questions while I tried not to fall apart. What time did you arrive? Did you hear their vehicle? Did they try the doors? Did you see weapons? Then they went to the rest stop. An hour later, they came back and said the part that still chills me. There's nothing there. No footprints. No signs of anyone. No tire tracks. Like the men had evaporated into the trees. But I knew they had been there, and I knew what they intended. The police followed me to a tire shop the next morning, making sure I wasn't alone until the van was repaired. I didn't sleep. I barely spoke. Every time someone walked behind me, I flinched so hard my teeth hurt. Before they left, one of the officers hesitated as if deciding whether to tell me something. "That rest stop you were at?" he said quietly. "It has a history." "A bad one?" He nodded. "We've had disappearances in that area for over a decade. Travelers, mostly young women, mostly alone. Nothing ever proven, but enough reports to make us pay attention." My stomach flipped. Why isn't it shut down? It's remote, hard to patrol, and nothing conclusive ever ties the cases together. But he paused. "You were right to trust your instincts." When they finally drove off, I sat behind the wheel of my newly repaired van, shaking in the daylight. For the first time since leaving home, I felt genuinely unsafe on the road. Not because of weather or car trouble, but because I had seen the darkness people were capable of when the world wasn't watching. That night, instead of sleeping in my van, I booked a cheap motel. The door had 2 locks and a faded chain latch, and I used every one of them. I made it to the West Coast eventually, started my job, built a routine. But I never forgot the tapping on my van, the whispering, the man's unmoving grin pressed against the glass. People say the world is mostly good. I still believe that. But now I know that the places in between, the dark stretches of highway, the silent rest stops, can hide the kind of danger you don't understand until you survive it. I never realized how quiet the Midwest could be until I was driving across it alone. I had always traveled with friends or family, but this Thanksgiving, I insisted on doing it solo, driving from Chicago to my aunt's remote Montana cabin. The first day had been long but uneventful, miles of interstate and fast food stops blurring together. By the second night, I was tired and craving a place to stretch my legs, so I veered off the main highway onto a narrow 2-lane road cutting through plains I hadn't even noticed on the map. The fog rolled in thick, swallowing the headlights in a ghostly white haze. My GPS assured me there were no towns for at least an hour. I drove slowly, straining to see anything beyond the faint glimmer of the lines marking the road. Then I spotted it, a small gas station, its sign flickering weakly in the fog, windows dusty but dimly lit from inside. Relief washed over me. I went in and found an elderly woman behind the counter. "Evening," I said, smiling. "Do you mind if I stay here a bit? I've been driving for hours." She paused, her eyes narrowing. "People don't like to linger out here after dark," she said slowly, her tone warning me more than words could. "I just need to rest, that's all," I replied, trying to hide my unease. I bought snacks, thanked her, and parked far from the station. As darkness swallowed the lot after the station closed, the world outside became absolute black, the horizon indistinguishable from the sky. I tried to tell myself it was just the isolation, the fatigue, the fog, but an uneasy chill settled in my chest. I had no idea that the night was about to turn into something I'd never forget. About an hour after the station closed, I heard the crunch of gravel under tires. I froze, heart hammering. A black SUV rolled silently up beside my window, headlights off. I couldn't see the driver's face, only the dark shape behind the windshield. My mind raced. Was it someone lost? Or someone dangerous? I quietly reclined my seat and turned the ignition. My hands shook as I pulled forward slowly, trying not to provoke anything. The SUV pivoted and began to follow me, just far enough behind that I couldn't shake it. Panic was building, my rational mind colliding with instinct. Come on, I whispered to myself. I sped up. The fog swallowed the road, but I could hear gravel skidding under the tires. Then, just as relief flickered through me, I hit something. A long, tarp-wrapped object thudded under my wheels, jolting the car. I slammed the brakes and jumped out, heart in my throat. I couldn't see what I had run over. The fog was relentless. Distant headlights appeared almost immediately, speeding toward me. My stomach dropped as the SUV barreled up behind the lights, stopping just short. Two figures emerged, one holding a metallic object I couldn't identify in the dim light. My legs moved before my brain did. I scrambled into the car, slamming the door, engine roaring to life. I didn't look back. My pulse pounded as I sped down the road, fear coiling like ice in my veins. I didn't know what I had seen, or if I had imagined it, but I knew I had narrowly escaped something unimaginable. The road stretched endlessly ahead, but the fear from the encounter refused to leave me. I forced myself to focus, keeping the headlights on high beam, scanning for any sign of the SUV or anything else. Every shadow seemed to flicker, every tree line just out of reach of my vision, twisting in the fog like it was moving. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe it was a hunting vehicle, someone playing a trick on a passing driver, or perhaps I had driven over a discarded bundle of equipment. But deep down, my gut screamed that this was different. Hours passed with my only companions being the fog, the sound of my engine, and the occasional crackle of distant wind through dry grass. I stayed alert, gripping the wheel so tightly my knuckles ached. Somewhere along the way, fatigue caught up with me. My eyelids drooped despite my fear, and I had to stop several times to stretch, shaking, checking behind me to make sure nothing had followed. At one point, I passed a cluster of abandoned buildings. My headlights swept over them, and I thought I saw a silhouette in one of the upper windows, but when I blinked, it was gone. My heartbeat thundered. The more I saw, the less I wanted to believe, yet I could not shake the gnawing certainty that someone, or something, had been tracking me. By the time I finally glimpsed faint town lights in the distance, I was shaking so hard I had to pull over and gather myself. Relief hit me in waves, though unease lingered like a shadow I couldn't shake. I called the police immediately. The officers on the other end listened quietly as I described the SUV, the figures, and the object on the road. When I finished, there was silence. No SUV reported, one officer said flatly, and no one's reported anyone missing out here tonight. Are you sure about the location? I repeated the coordinates. I think so, I admitted. I know what I saw. I didn't imagine it. After an hour on the line, the officers suggested I drive carefully to my aunt's place. It sounds like you just had a terrifying encounter, but there's no evidence. I drove the rest of the way with every nerve on edge, glancing at every shadow. By the time I reached my aunt's cabin, dawn was breaking, and my relief was tempered by exhaustion and a lingering sense of dread. Even years later, I replayed that night in my head. Had I stumbled across a crime scene? Had I narrowly escaped becoming part of one? The questions never left me. I eventually returned to Chicago, but the memory of that foggy highway haunted me for months. I avoided late-night drives, checked my mirrors obsessively, and shivered whenever I thought about that black SUV and the figures emerging from the darkness. My friends listened with wide eyes, some skeptical, others uneasy. Every Thanksgiving since, I think back to that night, the chilling silence, the impossibly black landscape, and the feeling that someone, or something, had been watching me, testing me. It taught me to trust my instincts, to stay vigilant, and to respect the unknown. I never fully understood what I encountered on that highway, but I learned a painful truth. Sometimes danger hides in plain sight, and ignoring the small warnings, fog, isolation, hesitation can bring you face to face with the unthinkable. Even today, whenever I drive at night on lonely roads, I grip the wheel a little tighter, alert for signs that others might be watching. And I never forget how fragile safety can feel in the dark. Trust your instincts and take caution seriously, especially when you're alone. Isolation magnifies danger, and sometimes what seems like a minor discomfort or hesitation can be a life-saving signal. Awareness, prudence, and respect for your environment can make the difference between survival and disaster. Graduation day felt like the end of everything, and the start of everything all at once. Riley, Harper, Jenna, Maya, Tessa, and I had been planning this road trip across northern Nevada for months, just us 5 friends, no distractions, no drama. We wanted to chase wide open skies, ghost towns, and stretches of desert where cell phones didn't exist. The night before departure, Riley's house was buzzing. Maps sprawled across the living room floor, snacks stacked high on the counter, and Spotify playlists competing for attention. That's when Harper dropped the bomb. "She's coming with us," she said, grinning nervously. I turned. Lena, a girl none of us had met before. "Wait, what?" Maya asked. "I thought this was just us," Jenna said, frowning. "We met online. She seemed cool," Harper mumbled. My stomach sank. Something in my gut told me this was a bad idea, but we had already booked the SUV and the campgrounds. By 11 p.m., the car was packed, engines humming, and we waved goodbye to Sacramento, the city lights shrinking behind us. I tried to ignore the pit in my stomach, convincing myself it was just pre-road trip jitters, but deep down, I couldn't shake the unease settling like a shadow over our plans. It was nearly midnight when we pulled off the highway. A lone diner blinked under flickering neon, promising coffee and warmth. Harper insisted on stopping, probably trying to impress Lena. The smell of fried grease hit us as soon as we opened the door. The waitress didn't smile. She barely glanced at us. We ordered food, laughing at nothing, trying to shake the tension I still carried. Then Jenna didn't come back right away. We waited, exchanging uneasy glances. When she returned, her face was pale, her hands trembling. "What happened?" Tessa asked. Jenna shook her head, gripping her water glass. I can't say. Not here." Her voice quivered. I wanted to press her, but something in her expression made me stop. We left, uneasy but eager to get back on the road. That's when the SUV changed. The heater was on, yet ice clung to my fingers. A sour, rotting smell slithered through the cabin. Lena gagged, retreating to the back seat, and even Harper covered her nose. "What the hell is that?" Riley asked, turning every knob, checking vents. We pulled over by a forested stretch, trying to get some air. Lena disappeared behind the trees. Minutes later, her laughter off, frantic, echoed through the woods, followed by Harper screaming. We ran into the trees, branches snapping underfoot. Harper's scream sliced the night, making my chest tighten. "Harper!" I shouted. Lena was nowhere in sight. The deeper we went, the more unnatural the silence became. My ears rang with the echo of our own panic. Jenna finally confessed in a trembling voice. "At the diner, I saw a man dragging a woman toward a pickup. It looked like Lena's car." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean, looked like Lena's car?" I demanded, but there was no time. Harper's scream came again, closer now. We found her tangled upside down in a tree, crude knots cutting into her wrists, her face streaked with dirt and blood. My hands shook as I untangled her, whispering over and over, it's okay, you're safe now." When we stumbled back to the SUV, the smell had followed us. My breath hitched as I looked in the cargo area. Beneath the seat lay a jacket, soaked in blood. My stomach churned. Lena was gone. Harper couldn't stop shaking, repeating over and over, "I don't even know her. She just showed up." And yet, something about the woods felt alive, watching, waiting. We drove to the hospital in silence, Riley gripping the steering wheel like it was our lifeline. Harper's confession finally came. "I didn't really know her," she said quietly. "We met online, 2 weeks ago. She begged to come along." The officer's questions blurred together, and my mind kept returning to the diner, to Jenna's terrified expression, to the smell in the SUV. Police scoured the forest for days. They found abandoned campsites, shallow graves, but no sign of Lena. The diner footage confirmed Jenna's vision. Lena had arrived alone and disappeared minutes after we left. The weight of it hung over us like smoke. We didn't speak much after that. Maya moved to another state. Tessa barely returned my calls. Riley and I sometimes lingered on the past, trying to make sense of what we had seen. Even now, the memory of that night clings like a shadow. The wind through northern Nevada forests whispers, a reminder of how quickly normal life can unravel, how strangers can appear, vanish, and leave chaos in their wake. And most chilling of all, Lena, or whatever she was, felt deliberate, almost purposeful. Months later, Locals warned us we weren't alone in remembering. Travelers spoke of a young woman, calm, friendly, approaching groups of girls at gas stations. Always asking if she could come along, always gone when no one looks. It felt like the world itself was cautioning us. The woods and the highways keeping secrets that humans shouldn't stumble upon. We never spoke of it again. I still have nightmares of Harper hanging from that tree, Lena's jacket in the SUV, and the smell that seemed to cling to the air. We thought we were just going on a road trip, chasing freedom and adventure, but freedom comes with danger when boundaries are ignored. Sometimes, I wonder if Lena is still out there, waiting for the next group of girls, smiling politely, offering to join them. Trust your instincts. Boundaries exist for a reason, and sometimes, the thrill of adventure isn't worth inviting danger into your life. I never thought I'd see Montana in December. After years of drifting apart, Maya in Seattle, Jordan in Denver, Bella in Chicago, and me stuck juggling shifts in New York, the four of us finally managed to plan a winter getaway. Glacier National Park had always been a dream, its towering peaks and frozen lakes painting postcards in my mind. I had packed my bags days ahead, feeling a bubbling excitement that mixed nostalgia with a faint sense of unease I couldn't name. When we arrived on December 30th, the first thing that hit me was the silence. Snow muffled everything. The rental cabin was cozy but remote, perched at the edge of a frozen trail, with no neighbors in sight. We unpacked, lit the fireplace, and toasted with cheap red wine, to surviving adulthood and pretending we have our lives together. Bella joked. Jordan rolled her eyes but smiled. Maya, ever practical, kept one eye on the dark tree line outside. As night fell, the storm started. Heavy flakes whipped against the windows, and soon the power cut out. We lit candles and tried to play cards by flickering light, but the wind outside sounded like a living thing. Lauren, always the adventurous one, decided to fetch firewood. Be careful, I warned. It's a whiteout out there. She nodded, wrapping her coat tighter, and stepped into the storm. Minutes later, she returned pale, muttering, "I thought I saw someone, a girl, outside." I laughed nervously. "You're just imagining things. It's a blizzard." But I noticed her hands trembling. Something about the way she said it didn't sit right with me. Even as we laughed it off, a shadow seemed to move beyond the porch, just at the edge of the snow. The next evening, we tried to push our nerves aside. Maya insisted we have a bonfire outside, despite the cold. The sky was an ink-black canvas, and the snow had stopped falling but left the forest eerily quiet. We sipped cocoa, chatting about work and old college stories, but there was a tension we couldn't shake. "Did anyone else see her?" Lauren whispered suddenly. She pointed toward a figure barely visible among the trees, a woman, standing perfectly still, her face turned away. When I blinked, she was gone. "You're seeing things," Jordan said, but her voice lacked conviction. Minutes later, the fire started flickering violently, as if the wind wasn't the only thing moving out there. Then came the footsteps. Crunch, 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 circling us. Yet no one was visible. We scrambled back to the cabin, bolting the door. My heart was pounding, ears straining for any sound. Later, as we tried to sleep, Lauren woke me with a gasp. "There's tapping on the window." I froze. 3 slow knocks, then a whisper. Asterisk, "Let me in. I'm freezing." Asterisk. We both stared at the swirling snow outside. Nothing. My rational mind told me it was the wind or shadows, but her terror was real. And I could feel it too. Something in the woods was waiting, patient, and watching. By New Year's Eve, we all agreed to leave first thing in the morning. But the storm worsened, trapping us. Fear had replaced laughter. Every creak of the cabin and whistling of wind sounded like footsteps approaching. I kept my phone close, but there was no signal. The snow was no longer beautiful, it felt alive. It was around midnight, when Bella screamed. I jumped out of my blanket and ran toward her voice. She was frozen in the hallway, staring at a figure at the end. My breath caught. It was the same girl Lauren had described, a woman soaked, frostbitten, eyes glassy and unblinking. "Please, help me," she whispered, her voice layered, echoing like dozens of whispers at once. Then her jaw unhinged in a way that made my stomach twist. She rushed forward impossibly fast. We slammed the nearest door and barricaded ourselves in, trembling, clutching whatever we could find. "We need to get out," Maya shouted. We scrambled to the window, but the storm was a wall of white. When we finally reached the SUV parked outside, the Wraith blocked the driver's side. Ice began creeping over the windshield, frost forming patterns like skeletal fingers. She leaned against the glass, whispering, "Asterisk, one of you belongs to me." Asterisk. Bella was already shivering uncontrollably. Before I could react, Bella opened the door. I screamed her name, but the storm swallowed her instantly. My chest felt hollow, disbelief and terror mingling. We had no choice but to focus on surviving ourselves. Jordan grabbed a flaming log from a nearby fire barrel, waving it at the Wraith. She recoiled, shrieking, and we jumped into the SUV, fumbling to start the engine. The SUV roared to life thanks to Maya's quick thinking with the emergency kit. But the storm wasn't done. The Wraith appeared repeatedly on the road, in mirrors, floating above the snow. The same dead pine tree kept reappearing, twisting the landscape, disorienting us. Panic threatened to overtake reason. Jordan clutched her Street Benedict pendant and placed it on the dashboard. A faint glow emanated from it, and the Wraith screamed, recoiling as if burned. For the first time, I felt a measure of hope. "Keep driving," Maya yelled. I slammed the gas pedal, weaving through the blizzard, heart hammering, eyes straining to see the road ahead. Finally, as dawn broke, the snowstorm began to ease. The Wraith disappeared entirely. We reached the main highway and were rescued by locals patrolling the area. Hysterical, frostbitten, exhausted, we had survived, but Bella was gone. Later, search parties found only her torn coat near an ice-covered ravine. Months later, the memories haunt me more than the storm ever did. Glacier National Park became a place of nightmares, a beauty that hides danger. Maya and I never vacationed there again. I sometimes wake in the middle of heavy snowfalls, imagining 3 slow taps on my window, and hear a faint whisper, "Asterisk, let me in, I'm freezing, asterisk." We survived physically, but emotionally we were scarred. Friends we thought were close were tested in ways no one could imagine. We learned firsthand that danger often wears familiar faces and comes from the places we trust most. Even now, I carry Bella's absence like a shadow. A reminder that some encounters are not meant to be rationalized. Some warnings are real, and ignoring them can have consequences. Trust your instincts, even when logic tells you otherwise. The world is full of beauty, but danger often hides where we least expect it. Courage, preparation, and vigilance can save lives, but some losses are irreversible, and respecting the unknown is as important as seeking adventure.